Today we understand that these disparate pieces must be part of a bigger but simpler narrative that recognizes democracy is the best system available to express and channel the popular will, protect minority rights, hold leaders accountable, and ensure government delivers essential goods and services not provided by the marketplace. And likewise, we understand that GDP numbers and economic growth alone are not enough. We need a broad-based prosperity that provides opportunities for all. We need both a bigger pie and slices for everyone. Informed by this understanding of our past experience, President Obama and Secretary Clinton are setting out to build a new approach of broad hemispheric cooperation designed to benefit all of our citizens in North, Central, and South America and the Caribbean, from the more developed to the most hard-pressed. This path rests on two core pillars: democratic governance on the one hand, and inclusive prosperity on the other. These are the two essential components of what the ancient Greeks called the good life, and what the United States founders had in mind when they committed our nation to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As we look at the Western Hemisphere today, we see a landscape transformed from the past, but one that has still not achieved its full potential. For more and more people, democratically elected governments are promoting economic growth, developing institutions, and strengthening human capital to expand opportunity and social justice. Yet even with these signs of important progress, we know that many of the old challenges remain, and that new ones are arising. New economic stresses are testing the region's commitments to markets and genuine democracy. For the last decade, growth has been uneven. High crime, poverty, and income inequality rates remind us that too many people have not realized the benefits of free elections, open trade, and responsible economic policies. And the transnational nature of many of the dangers our societies face, cartels, pandemic disease, environmental degradation, remind us that governing requires agile partnerships across civil society and across national boundaries. Meeting these challenges requires enhanced engagement and renewed partnership. We in the United States have a special responsibility to exercise respectful leadership that can help our hemisphere serve as a beacon to the rest of the world. The President's first visit abroad was to Canada, and not too long after that, to Mexico. He attended the Summit of the Americas in Trinidad with all of our democratic counterparts in the region, and has hosted President Lula here in Washington. Vice President Biden traveled to the region in March to attend the Progressive Governance Summit in Chile and meet with Central American leaders in Costa Rica. Secretary Clinton has discussed our vision for this hemisphere on her visits to Mexico, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. As President Obama and Secretary Clinton have both made clear, our partnership requires a genuine willingness to listen and learn from our neighbors. We recognize that we don't have the answer to every problem, and past approaches and formulas have not always worked, and that not every good answer comes with a stamp labeled "Made in the USA." Thus, we will look across our borders to seek ideas and best practices wherever we can find them. So, for example, as we look for new and innovative ways to promote equitable growth and shared prosperity, we do well to look around our hemisphere for inspiration. Conditional cash transfer programs, such as the Bolsa Familia in Brazil and Mexico's Oportunidades program, provide families with much-needed assistance, while at the same time requiring personal accountability by keeping children in school and taking them in for regular checkups. These two programs have reached 16 million families and shown dramatic results. Oportunidades has increased the likelihood of secondary enrollment in rural areas while cutting the dropout rate for students. We are discussing ways to build a network of government officials, international financial institutions, and NGOs to share the lessons of these programs. Expanded engagement will help us advance our overarching goals in the Western Hemisphere, particularly democratic governance. The hemisphere's hard-won evolution from authoritarian regimes to democratically elected governments is one of the great stories of the last quarter century. Today, democracy, though imperfect, is the norm. Recognizing the weight of this transformation, President Clinton in 1994 launched the Summit of the Americas, inviting the democratically elected leaders of this hemisphere to come together to discuss issues of common interest. His efforts and those of his predecessors were crystallized in the Inter-American Democratic Charter, which the hemisphere's 33 other democracies signed on September 11, 2001 in Lima, Peru, a sometimes forgotten bright spot in that very dark day in our history, but the best antidote to the fear and hatred that that darkness brought. This instrument's bedrock values of liberty, equality, and human rights are what we aspire to and what we all seek to advance. We must recognize that each of our countries has pursued its own democratic journey. Next month in El Salvador, for example, we will see the peaceful democratic transfer of power between representatives of opposing sides in a terrible civil war that tore the country asunder a decade ago. But however our individual trajectories might unfold, we cannot turn our back on the Charter and our shared vision of a robust democratic order. That is why we look forward to the day when every country in the hemisphere, including Cuba, can take its seat at this very special table in a manner that is consistent with the principles of the Inter-American Democratic Charter. The United States seeks a new beginning with Cuba, and we have changed our policy in ways that we believe will advance liberty and create opportunity for the Cuban people. We now allow Cuban Americans to visit the island more freely and provide resources to their families there. The President has also made clear our willingness and our readiness to engage constructively with the Cuban government on a wide range of issues. But as the United States reaches out to the Cuban people, we must also call on our friends in the hemisphere to join together in supporting liberty, equality, and human rights for all Cubans. No one should mistake our willingness to engage governments with whom our relations have deteriorated in recent years for an abdication of principle. On the contrary, we believe that engagement strengthens our abilities to raise concerns about democracy and human rights as we look for ways to cooperate in areas of common interest. One of the biggest challenges facing democracies everywhere is demonstrating to our citizens that democracy produces shared prosperity for all its hardworking people. The region is showing that democracy can deliver if governments can find ways to go beyond trade and capital liberalization, to craft policies and build institutions committed to social justice. But the current global economic downturn threatens to erode these gains. So our first priority must be to get our economic house in order. President Obama has taken unprecedented steps to address the economic crisis by correcting deficiencies in our banking and regulatory systems and enacting a stimulus package that will produce jobs and get America and the Americas on track to economic recovery. We also joined with our G20 partners to set aside over $1 trillion for countries going through difficult times, particularly those that are most vulnerable. We will work with our partners to ensure that the Inter-American Development Bank can take the necessary steps to increase its current levels of lending, and we will study the needs for recapitalization in the future. As we take these steps, we must work together to ensure that the poorest among us do not fall further behind. The impact of the economic crisis has hit hardest those at the bottom rung of the ladder of every society. Without action, what was already an unacceptable gap between rich and poor in Latin America could widen as exports, family income, and remittances decline. So we will support efforts to create jobs, improve education, expand access to health care, and broaden opportunities across the Americas. Continuing trade integration is a vital part of the return to economic progress, as well as long-term stability and social opportunity. But we have seen that while free trade promotes economic growth and reduces absolute poverty, gains are not always shared, and promises of opportunity remain elusive. That's why we'll ask our hemispheric partners to ensure that all their citizens, regardless of background, have the opportunity to secure a better life for themselves and their children. We support initiatives such as Pathways to Prosperity in the Americas, which seek to ensure the benefits of trade are shared widely within our societies. We will also work to expand and refocus pathways to better promote social justice and inclusiveness, expand participation, and help farms, small businesses, craftspeople, and traditionally excluded groups reap the fruits of international commerce. On a bilateral basis and in multilateral forums, we'll promote the development and enforcement of national and international standards to protect the environment and labor rights, which are needed to connect rising productivity to rising personal incomes. We must make clear that these standards are not concessions grudgingly required as a condition of market access, but necessary components of trade policy that are advantageous to us all. Education is a key element of the broader agenda that the President brought to the summit because it is also a linchpin of economic development and an engine of opportunity. While enrollments have swelled throughout our hemisphere, too many young people fail to complete their studies and lack access to the quality of education they deserve. During my time as Dean of the LBJ School at the University of Texas, I saw how science and education generate new solutions and provide new avenues for development. I saw students from throughout the Americas and other parts of the world thrive both academically and personally, developing skills and habits of mind that they would take back to their home countries. We are dedicated to finding ways of sharing scientific knowledge and leveraging science to improve people's lives. That's why we're asking Congress for $82 million for education projects in the region. As the President pointed out at the Summit of the Americas, this is not charity, but an investment in our future. We also want to build partnerships from the ground up. When Secretary Clinton visited Mexico last month, she met with citizens who are collaborating across borders to improve people's lives. She announced that the United States will support a Mexican summit of youth leaders to connect young people who are working to end violence throughout Latin America. We will be launching new people-to-people initiatives to engage the public directly, including through civil society organizations, NGOs, the private sector, and academia. Just this morning, I discussed the Costa Rica USA Foundation, CRUSA, which Costa Rica's newly appointed ambassador to the United States raised with me. This foundation, initially seeded with $47 million in USAID legacy money, has already donated $47 million to programs in science and technology, education, and the environment, and has $68 million left in cash as a return on wise investments made. It's a good example of the innovative public-private partnerships that can leverage initial government efforts to advance education and development. The energy that our economies require for economic development also has been a principal driver of climate change. We see the human toll. In this hemisphere alone, we must confront rising sea levels in the Caribbean, diminishing glaciers in the Andes, and powerful storms on the Gulf Coast. The United States will take the lead in addressing this challenge, both by making commitments of our own and engaging other nations in a common effort to do the same. We must move beyond the old false debate that pitted reductions in global warming against economic growth to understand that a partnership on energy and climate change can promote both growth and an environmentally sustainable future. That is why President Obama proposed the new Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas that seeks to leverage the example of countries like Mexico and Brazil, which promote renewable energy. Together, we can work to increase efficiency, improve our infrastructure, share technology,